Ibn Allah said in his wise aphorisms, "So long as you are in the world, be not surprised at the existence of sorrows, for truly it manifests nothing but what is in keeping with its character or its inevitable nature." We feel sad either for past hurt, regret, or for unattainable desires. It either comes from a picture of how our life should look like or should have looked like, or due to a potential that remains dormant within and is seeking to manifest itself, that require from us a discernment, because one type of sadness needs healing while the others needs a pursuit for a change. If it is related to the past, it needs healing. If it is related for a potential, it needs a pursuit. On this, Ibn Allah said, "You're wanting something other than Allah to remain when it is departing is proof that you are not present with Him. And your feeling sad for losing other than Him is proof that you have not reached Him." He also said, "A sign of the heart's death is the absence of sadness over the acts of obedience you have neglected and the abandonment of regret over the mistakes you have made." So this type of sorrow is seeking to experience forgiveness, healing, or to pursue something you have not done or you should be doing. Ibn Allah also said, "One of the signs of delusion is sadness over the loss of obedience coupled with an absence of resolve to bring it back to life." So we feel we should be doing something and we're sad for not doing it, but we're not putting effort to do it. And he also said, "What the hearts find of sadness and depression is from their being denied the vision of Allah." Sadness can also comes from being affected with something present that is hurting. And so it's an expression of a need to pursue something to lift or alleviate that hurt. Sadness can also be an expression of grief, which is an expression of deep love. And sadness can also come from feeling sorrow for being separate from Allah, which we know is an illusion. And in that case, it requires putting an effort to become conscious of Allah. And finally, there is a feeling of sorrow for those who are not conscious of the truly real that a Gnostic may feel. And we have to be careful not to become subject to despair, because despair is a draining of effort and the energy of life. We rather have to form a trust with Allah. We can still feel sad for others who are not guided, and we try our best to plant seeds and ask Allah to use us to spread His message. But eventually, we have to trust in the process. It takes time for the seeds to grow. Eventually, everyone will wake up, and we have to trust in Allah, in Allah's process. The Quran describes those whose eyes are flooded with tears by sadness in describing Christian monks who feel moved when they hear the words of the Quran. But anyone who's moved with the Quran beyond being a Christian priest, the ayah is applicable also, that people are moved sometimes with the words of Allah. This type of sadness, um, it comes again either because the person feels separated from Allah, or it's an expression of the softening of the heart, that the heart is deeply touched and warmed. And there are types of sadness that Allah in the Quran try to tell us not to stay stuck in it. So Allah says, don't feel inferior and don't feel sad. When you feel like defeated, try not to feel inferior uh, or feel sad, because the external measurement for spiritual growth and thriving is different than the internal measurement or criteria. And we can see also the Prophet ﷺ, when he was in the cave, stuck with his companion Abu Bakr, and they were about to be killed. Abu Bakr was afraid and sad, and the Prophet told him, according to the Quran, don't feel sad, for indeed Allah is with us. So it is this firm belief or faith that no matter what, Allah is with us, is what help us shift the sadness or go to a higher Maqām, a higher station of awareness of the divine presence, and receiving from him the strengthening quality or the guiding insight or vision or inspiration. And that's why Allah describes the believers in the Quran as those who have no fear over them, no fear will come over them, and neither will they feel sad. So it is not like we will never experience sadness, but it is a sadness that is, again, a softening, touching, warming of the heart rather than feeling despair. Because we see that the Prophet ﷺ cried when he lost his beloved Khadija and his son Ibrahim and his daughters. He felt sad and he cried, and people said, even you cry? And he said, this is a sign of Allah's mercy, of the deep, deep love. So he was not crying out of despair. He actually said that there is a wet nurse waiting for his son Ibrahim on the gate of the garden. So he was assured that his son is still alive, but he said, I'm going to miss you in this physical world, which is a sign of deep love. So it is not, again, a sign of despair, but a sign of a heart that feel touched and feel deep love. The other types of sadness that comes from despair or regret or feeling unattainable desires, these are the type of sadness we shouldn't get stuck with, because it doesn't benefit the heart, as Ibn al-Qayyim says. And he said also that the most beloved pursuit of shaitan is to make the devotee of Allah feel sad, so that he can get stuck and stop walking towards Allah and stop navigating the way for Allah. And this type of sadness is what the Prophet ﷺ sought refuge from. And so he will ask Allah, I seek refuge in you from sadness and sorrow. But he also told us that any type of distress or depression or sadness that the believer experience, but it will be an expiation of some of the sins he might have committed. So it is in that way, sadness and depression is kind of clearing the way or bringing alert to that which you need to pursue, whether it's a healing or seeking forgiveness for past mistakes, or to pursue a desire, but with awareness of all the divine alternatives that can help you attain that desire, not externally but internally, through other potentials that might be available. Like, for example, someone might be feeling sad because they didn't have children, but there is alternative to foster a child or adopt a child or work with the children somehow. And sometimes when we close to that alternative, then we get stuck in the sadness because we want the desire to love and nurture, to take a certain particular specific picture or way. But when we become conscious of Allah and open to receive from Allah, He might open us to feel that desire to love and to nurture in other alternatives way. And we see how the prophets والسلام, they cried. For example, Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam, when he lost Prophet Yusuf, his son, he kept crying because he had a feeling he's still alive and he didn't know where he was. And the Quran describes him that his eyes became white out of sorrow or sadness. So it's okay to acknowledge the sadness and to walk through it. So sadness can be, like any other emotion, a gateway or a block. And it's our choice whether we want it to be the gateway and move through it to a higher state of awareness or another station, or to be stuck with it longer. So Ibn al-Qayyim have told us there are degrees of sadness, the sadness of the ordinary people who have ordinary level of consciousness, which sometimes can be due to not attaining something external, or due to being forgetful of Allah and not doing the obligated rituals or duties. And the second degree of sadness is for the people who feel that they are occupied with other than witnessing Allah. And the higher third level of sadness is the sadness of the Gnostics, who want their thoughts to always focus on contemplating Allah and not to object Allah's decree when the outcome does not match what they desire. So they accept Allah's decree all the way, and they feel sad if they find slight objections in their hearts, which is again a sign of being separated from Allah, or a sign that one is fallen into illusion. But the Gnostic will quickly try to remember Allah, to be conscious of Allah again, so he can open himself to receive. And finally, I would like to end with again a poem from Khalil Gibran from his book The Prophet. He said, "Then a woman said, 'Speak to us of joy and sorrow.' And he answered, 'Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again into your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say, joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. Indeed, you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty are you at a standstill and balanced. When the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and his silver, needs must your joy or your sorrow rise or fall. As Ibn Ata'Allah said, let the things that make you happy be fewer, and the things that make you sad will be fewer. And as Prophet Muhammad والسلام, said, remember Allah in your joyous times, so He may remember you or bless you in your hard times.